Captain Jake Morrison stood in the massive council chamber on Zentari Prime and felt the weight of 15 years pressing down on his shoulders. The chamber stretched up into darkness above him, while alien representatives from dozens of species filled the curved seating that surrounded the central speaking platform. Some floated in gravity pods, while others perched on crystalline platforms that hummed with energy. The air itself tasted different here, processed through filters that made it breathable for so many different life forms. Jake wore his best diplomatic uniform with the blue and silver insignia of the Terran Diplomatic Corps on his chest. Behind him stood Ambassador Lisa Kane, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and her face showing the strain of the past 3 days of negotiations. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, crafting the proposal that would secure humanity's future in the galaxy. The proposal was simple and fair. Humans wanted colonization rights to 12 worlds in the Outer Rim territories. These were not random worlds chosen from a map. These were planets that human forces had fought and died to liberate from the Black Star pirates just 2 years ago. Human blood had been spilled on those worlds. Human ships had burned in their skies. Human families had mourned their dead, while the Galaxy Council sat safely in their chambers and watched. Lisa stepped forward to the speaking platform. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber as the translation devices built into every seat converted her words into hundreds of alien languages. She spoke of partnership and mutual benefit. She reminded the Council of Humanity's contributions over the past 15 years, the medical advances that had saved millions of lives across dozens of species, the defensive technologies that had prevented 3 major wars, the trade routes that humans had established and protected with their own ships and crews. She presented the colonization proposal with careful precision. Humans would develop the 12 worlds responsibly. They would share any discoveries with the Council. They would establish trade partnerships with neighboring species. They would provide defensive support for the region just as they had done everywhere else. The chamber fell silent when she finished speaking. Jake watched the faces of the alien representatives and felt something cold growing in his stomach. There should have been discussion. There should have been questions and negotiations. Instead, there was only silence and the soft humming of the environmental systems. Council Speaker Vorthak rose from his platform. The massive reptilian alien's scales caught the light as he moved, creating patterns of green and gold across his body. His voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "The Galactic Council has considered the human request," he said, and Jake noticed he did not say proposal or petition, but request, as if humans were children asking for treats. "The Council finds that humanity's aggressive nature and unpredictable behavior make them unsuitable for expansion into the Outer Rim territories. These worlds will be distributed among more stable and peaceful species who can develop them properly." Lisa's face went pale, but she kept her voice steady. "Speaker Vorthak, humanity has proven its commitment to peace and stability. Our record speaks for itself." "Your record," Vorthak said, "speaks of violence and conquest. The Council has decided that humanity's membership in this body is no longer beneficial to galactic peace." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Expulsion. After 15 years of loyal service, of fighting and dying for galactic peace, of sharing every discovery and innovation, they were being thrown out like unwanted guests. But Vorthak was not finished. Furthermore, the Council hereby implements Containment Protocol 7 regarding the human species. Humans will restrict their activities to their home system and currently established colonies. Any attempt to expand beyond these boundaries will be met with appropriate responses. Jake felt his hands clench into fists at his sides. Containment Protocol 7 was what the Council used for aggressive species that posed a threat to galactic stability. It was the same protocol they had used on the Crexan Empire after their war of expansion 3 centuries ago. Admiral Ben Clark's voice crackled through Jake's earpiece from the human fleet waiting in orbit. "Captain, we're seeing massive energy. Signatures from Council ships. They're powering weapons." Lisa tried one more time. "Speaker Vorthak, surely we can discuss this. Humanity has been a faithful member of this council. We have contributed more than our share to galactic peace and prosperity. The decision is final," Vorthak said. "Human representatives have 1 standard hour to leave Zentari space. Your ships will be escorted to the system boundary." Jake activated his communication device and spoke quietly into it. "Admiral Clark, begin immediate withdrawal. Signal all human personnel on Council stations to evacuate immediately. Implement Protocol Omega Authorization 77 Alpha." Protocol Omega was something that had been developed in secret over the past 5 years, as more and more humans in the diplomatic corps had begun to suspect that the Council's attitude toward humanity was changing. It was a contingency plan that no one had ever wanted to use. Dr. Amy Foster had been monitoring the proceedings from the Human Research Station in the outer system. Her voice came through Jake's earpiece with barely controlled fury. "Captain, I'm reading massive data transfers from Council computers. They're copying everything. Every piece of human research, every technological innovation, every military tactical report we've shared with them over the past 15 years. Jake closed his eyes. It was worse than he had thought. This was not a simple expulsion. This was theft on a galactic scale. The Council was taking everything humanity had contributed and then throwing them out so they could claim it as their own. Lisa gathered her papers with shaking hands. "This is a mistake, Speaker Vorthak. Humanity has been nothing but loyal to this council. Loyalty," Vorthak said, "is not the same as compatibility. The council has spoken." As they walked out of the chamber, Jake could hear the alien representatives already beginning to discuss how to divide up the worlds that humans had died to liberate. The Meridian Consortium wanted the mining rights on 3 of the planets. The Vorthani Empire claimed 2 others for strategic purposes. The Zephyrian Republic argued for agricultural worlds that could help feed their growing population. Not one of them mentioned the human lives that had been lost to secure those worlds. Not one of them acknowledged the human ships that still patrolled those systems to keep them safe. They spoke of the planets as if they were empty lots being sold at auction. In the shuttle bay, Jake met with the other human representatives who had been scattered throughout the massive station. Commander Nina Bell had been working with the Council's Defensive Planning Committee. Engineer Sam Brooks had been consulting on infrastructure projects. Dr. Paul Carter had been collaborating with alien scientists on medical research. All of them had the same story. The Council had been systematically copying human knowledge and innovations for months. Every technical manual, every research report, every strategic analysis had been duplicated and filed away in Council databases. The aliens had been preparing for this moment while pretending to value human partnership. "They planned this," Nina said as their shuttle pulled away from the station. "This wasn't a sudden decision. They've been preparing to steal everything we've developed and then throw us out." Jake watched Zentari Prime shrink behind them and felt something fundamental change inside him. For 15 years he had believed in the ideals of the Galactic Council. He had believed that different species could work together for the common good. He had believed that humanity's contributions would be valued and respected. Now he knew the truth. The Council had never seen humans as partners. They had seen them as useful tools to be used and discarded when they were no longer needed. They had taken human innovations and called them their own. They had used human military strength to secure their own interests, and then decided that humans were too aggressive to be trusted. As their shuttle reached the human fleet waiting at the edge of the system, Jake opened a secure channel to Earth. "This is Captain Morrison to Terran High Command. Council membership terminated under hostile conditions. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Omega, full scale. We're coming home." The response came back within minutes. President Helen Cross herself was on the channel. "Protocol Omega confirmed, Captain. Show them what happens when they bite the hand that feeds them." President Helen Cross stood in the emergency session chamber deep beneath the Terran Capitol complex and watched as representatives from every human colony and military command appeared on the holographic displays around the circular table. The chamber had been built during the early days of Earth's expansion into space, designed to coordinate responses to existential threats. Today, it would serve that purpose again. "Ladies and gentlemen," Helen said, her voice carrying the weight of command that had made her the youngest president in Terran history. "As of 6 hours ago, humanity has been expelled from the Galactic Council and placed under containment protocols. They have stolen our technology, claimed our achievements as their own, and decided we are too dangerous to exist freely in the galaxy." Admiral Ben Clark's image flickered slightly as his ship moved through hyperspace toward Earth. "Madam President, the fleet is en route from Zentari space. All diplomatic personnel have been evacuated. We confirmed massive data theft from Council computers. They took everything." Helen nodded grimly. "Then we proceed with Protocol Omega, full implementation. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from all galactic affairs. We close every channel, recall every citizen, and shut down every system we built for them. Admiral Clark, what's our timeline?" 12 hours for complete communication blackout," Clark replied. 24 hours for personnel evacuation from all Council territories. 72 hours for infrastructure shutdown. Colonel Rick Turner was already at his station on Mars, overseeing the massive communication hub that connected human space with the rest of the galaxy. The facility sprawled across 20 square kilometers of the red planet's surface. Its towers and dishes pointed toward every corner of known space. For 15 years, it had carried messages, data, and diplomatic communications between Earth and hundreds of alien worlds. "Beginning communication shutdown," Rick reported to the emergency session. "All outbound channels to Council space are going dark in sequence. Emergency frequencies will remain active for 6 more hours to allow final evacuation confirmations. Then those go dark too." On the displays around Helen, she could see the cascade beginning. Commander Nina Bell was at New Geneva Station in the Proxima system, the largest human trade hub outside of Earth's solar system. The station served over 40 different species and processed millions of tons of cargo every month. "All alien personnel are being politely informed that the station is closing for emergency maintenance," Nina reported. "We're giving them 4 hours to collect their people and cargo, then we're shutting down completely. The automated systems are already refusing new docking requests." Dr. Amy Foster had been coordinating the research withdrawal from her lab on Europa. Human scientists had been working with alien colleagues on dozens of projects scattered across Council space. Medical research that could save millions of lives. Agricultural techniques that could feed entire planets. defensive technologies that kept whole sectors safe from pirates and raiders. All joint research projects are being terminated immediately, Amy said, her voice tight with controlled anger. We're destroying all shared databases and pulling our people out of every alien facility. The Council wanted us gone, so we're going. Completely. Engineer Sam Brooks was leading the most complex part of the withdrawal. Human engineers had built infrastructure throughout Council space over the past 15 years, hyperspace relay stations that made long-distance communication possible, quantum gates that allowed instant travel between distant systems, defensive platforms that protected trade routes from raiders, power plants that supplied energy to entire planets. We're not destroying anything immediately, Sam reported. We're just withdrawing maintenance and technical support. These systems will keep working for a while, but without human maintenance, they'll start failing within months. The more complex systems might last a year if they're lucky. Helen watched the status displays as human assets across the galaxy began going dark. It was like watching the lights of a city being switched off one by one. Every human ship was being recalled. Every human citizen was being evacuated. Every human-built system was being shut down or abandoned. "What about our colonies?" asked General Mike Thompson from the Titan military base. "We have 17 established colonies outside Earth's solar system." "The colonies stay," Helen said firmly. "We're not abandoning our own people, but we're sealing them off from Council space. No trade, no communication, no contact of any kind. We become invisible to them." Captain Steve Parker was already implementing the isolation protocols from his ship near the Outer Rim territories. His job was to establish the new boundaries of human space and make sure no Council ships could monitor human activities. "We're deploying stealth monitoring stations throughout the border regions," Steve reported. "We'll know if they try to approach our space, but they won't know we're watching them." The first responses from alien governments began coming in within hours. Trade Captain Zekthul of the Meridian Consortium had arrived at New Geneva Station, expecting to pick up a routine cargo shipment, and found the station completely empty except for automated systems. "The humans have all disappeared," Zekthul's message said, confusion clear in his voice. "The station is operational, but there's no one here. All I'm getting is an automated message saying they've withdrawn from Galactic affairs indefinitely." Similar reports flooded in from across Council space. Human personnel had vanished overnight from hundreds of facilities. Human ships had disappeared from trade routes they had patrolled for years. Human research teams had abandoned projects that were years in development. Dr. Paul Carter had been one of the last humans to leave Council space. As humanity's leading expert on alien biology, he had worked closely with scientists from dozens of species. Many of them had become genuine friends over the years. Before activating the final communication blackout, he recorded one last message. "To my colleagues in the galactic scientific community," Paul said, looking directly into the camera. "For 15 years, we worked together in the spirit of mutual discovery and benefit. We shared every breakthrough, every innovation, every discovery. We believed we were building something together that would benefit all life in the galaxy." Paul paused, his voice becoming harder. "We have learned that the Council has been systematically stealing our research and claiming it as their own. We have been expelled from the galactic community and placed under containment protocols. The Council has decided that humans are too aggressive and unpredictable to be trusted with freedom." His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. "Very well. You wanted us gone. Congratulations. You got your wish. From this moment forward, humanity withdraws completely from galactic affairs. We will have no contact with Council. Species. We will provide no assistance, no trade, no cooperation of any kind. Paul leaned forward slightly. You have made it clear that you can manage galactic affairs better without us. Now you'll have the chance to prove it. Good luck. The message was transmitted on every frequency used by Council species. Then the transmitters went dark forever. Admiral Ben Clark had reached Earth and was coordinating the final phases of the withdrawal from Fleet Headquarters. The scope of what they were shutting down was staggering. Humans had been involved in every aspect of galactic civilization for 15 years. They had built the infrastructure that connected distant worlds. They had developed the technologies that made interstellar trade profitable. They had provided the military force that kept the shipping lanes safe. All human personnel are accounted for, Clark reported to President Cross. Total evacuation complete. All communication channels to Council space are now closed. All automated. Systems have been reprogrammed to refuse contact with Council species. Helen looked around the emergency session chamber at the faces of humanity's leaders. They had spent 15 years trying to be good galactic citizens. They had shared their knowledge freely. They had fought and died for planets that weren't even their own. They had worked to build a peaceful and prosperous galaxy for all species. The Council had repaid them with theft, expulsion, and containment. Then it's done, Helen said quietly. From this moment forward, we are alone again. No contact with the Council, no trade with their species, no assistance of any kind. They wanted to see what the galaxy looks like without humans in it. She stood up and looked directly into the main camera that would carry her words to every human settlement in known space. They're about to find out. The silence that followed was complete and absolute. For the first time in 15 years, no. Human voice spoke across the galactic communication networks. No human ship requested permission to dock at alien ports. No human scientist shared a breakthrough discovery with alien colleagues. Humanity had simply vanished from galactic civilization as completely as if they had never existed at all. In the council chambers on Centauri Prime, Speaker Vorthak received the first reports of the human withdrawal with satisfaction. The aggressive species had been removed from galactic affairs. The galaxy would be more peaceful without them. It would take months before he began to understand what humanity's silence really meant for the future of galactic civilization. 3 months after the human withdrawal, Fleet Commander Thurvak of the Vorthani Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his engines fail for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. The massive starship drifted helplessly in space while engineering. Teams scrambled to restore power. Around him, similar problems plagued the entire Vorthani fleet. "Commander," his chief engineer reported with barely concealed panic, "the quantum resonance chambers are destabilizing again. We can't maintain the energy matrix. The whole propulsion system is breaking down." Thurvak stared at the engineering reports with growing dread. The Vorthani had been so proud of their advanced starship engines. They had claimed them as a triumph of Vorthani science and engineering. The engines were faster and more efficient than anything else in the galaxy. They had given the Vorthani a significant advantage in both trade and military operations. The truth was more embarrassing. The engines were human designs that Vorthani scientists had reverse-engineered from technical manuals stolen during joint research projects. The Vorthani had understood enough to build the engines but not enough to maintain them properly. Now, without access to human technical knowledge, the systems were failing one by one. "How many ships in the fleet are still operational?" Thurvak asked. "Fewer than half, sir. And those are running on backup systems that won't last much longer." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Meridian Consortium had lost 3 major trade ships when their navigation systems failed during hyperspace jumps. The systems had been based on human mathematical models that the Meridians had copied but never fully understood. Without human support, the navigation computers began making critical errors that could scatter ships across thousands of light years. Captain Steve Parker watched these failures from his hidden observation post near the Outer Rim territories. His stealth ship was invisible to alien sensors, allowing him to monitor galactic events without being detected. What he saw confirmed everything the human leadership had predicted. The Vorthani fleet is down to 30% operational capacity, Steve reported to Earth during his weekly communication window. The Meridian Trade Network has suspended all long-range operations. 3 of their ships are missing and presumed lost in hyperspace. The failures weren't limited to military and trade operations. On the agricultural world of Zephyr Prime, crops were beginning to fail as the automated farming systems broke down. The Zephyrians had been so impressed with human agricultural technology that they had replaced their traditional farming methods entirely. Human-designed systems could produce 3 times the food with half the resources, but the systems required constant monitoring and adjustment that only human agricultural experts truly understood. The Zephyrians had learned to operate the machines, but not to truly understand them. When problems arose that weren't covered in the instruction manuals, they had no idea how to fix them. Regional Governor Zelith stood in the middle of a failing crop field and watched months of work dying before his eyes. The automated irrigation systems were flooding some areas while leaving others bone dry. The soil treatment systems were applying the wrong chemical mixtures. The harvesting machines had stopped working entirely. "How much food production have we lost?" Zelith asked his agricultural minister. 40% and rising, Governor. If we can't fix these systems soon, we'll be looking at famine within 6 months. The same pattern was repeating across dozens of worlds. Human technology had become so integrated into galactic civilization that its sudden absence created failures throughout the infrastructure that kept hundreds of billions of aliens alive and prosperous. Ambassador Linda Hayes monitored these developments from a secret intelligence post hidden in an asteroid field near the galactic core. Her job was to track the political consequences of humanity's withdrawal. What she found was both satisfying and troubling. "The Council is in chaos," Linda reported to President Cross during a secure transmission. 3 species have formally requested direct contact with humanity. 7 more have introduced resolutions calling for our immediate readmission to the Council. The political pressure was building as the economic and technological failures mounted. The peaceful Deltari had been humanity's strongest supporters in the Council, and they were now openly criticizing the expulsion decision. Ambassador Kelvin of the Deltari had given a speech that was being broadcast across the galaxy. "We told you this was a mistake," Kelvin had said in the Council chambers. "Humanity was never our enemy. They were our partners, our friends, our allies. We have thrown away 15 years of cooperation and mutual benefit because some of you were jealous of their achievements." The warrior clans of the Crexan Empire, surprisingly, had also begun to express grudging respect for humanity's response. War Chief Grothan had made a statement that was causing quite a stir in galactic political circles. "The humans fight like true warriors," Grothan had declared. "Not with weapons and ships, but with discipline and unity. They struck at their enemies without firing a single shot. This is the kind of tactical thinking that wins wars, Dr. Tony." Mitchell was monitoring galactic communications from a listening post on the edge of human space. His job was to track the growing political movement that intelligence reports were calling the human question. Young aliens who had worked with humans were beginning to organize protests and demonstrations. The human question movement is growing. Faster than anyone expected, Tony reported. Students on 12 different worlds have organized protests demanding humanity's return. Young professionals who worked with human teams are publicly criticizing the Council's decision. The protests were particularly strong on worlds where humans had made significant contributions. On the medical research world of Sanctuary, young, alien doctors were demonstrating outside government buildings. They carried signs demanding the return of human medical researchers who had been working on breakthrough treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. Dr. Yilneth, a young Meridian physician, had given an interview that was being repeated across the galactic news networks. "Human doctors saved my life when I was injured in an accident," she said. "They developed the surgical techniques that repaired my spinal cord. They trained me in medical procedures that I use every day to save other lives. Now the Council has thrown them out and called them aggressive and dangerous. It's insane." The technological failures were creating security problems as well. The hyperspace relay network that connected distant parts of the galaxy was beginning to malfunction. The relays had been built using human engineering specifications, but the maintenance procedures required knowledge that only human technicians possessed. As the relays failed, communication between distant worlds became unreliable. Trade shipments went missing because coordination between shipping companies broke down. Military responses to pirate attacks were delayed because fleet commanders couldn't coordinate their operations. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, was leading a reconnaissance mission to observe the security situation in the former Council territories. What he found confirmed their worst fears. "Pirate activity has increased by 400% in the past month," Jake reported to Earth. "The security networks that human forces maintained are completely gone. Criminal organizations are moving back into territories that we pacified years ago. The Black Star Pirates, the same group that humans had fought to drive out of the Outer Rim territories, were already reclaiming their old bases. Without human patrol ships to maintain security, the pirates moved freely through systems that had been safe for years." Trade Captain Vex of the Meridian Consortium had been one of the most vocal supporters of humanity's expulsion from the Council. He had argued that humans were too aggressive and that their military presence made other species nervous. Now his cargo ships were being attacked by pirates on routes that had been completely safe just months before. "Where are the security forces?" Vex demanded during an emergency session of the Meridian Trade Board. "Our ships are being attacked and robbed every week. The Council promised us that removing the humans would make space safer, not more dangerous." The answer was obvious to anyone who had been paying attention. Human forces had been providing security for trade routes throughout the galaxy. Their patrol ships had kept the pirates at bay through constant vigilance and quick response to threats. With the humans gone, there was no one to fill the gap they had left behind. Council species had military forces, but they were designed for territorial defense, not the kind of mobile security operations that trade route protection required. Human military doctrine emphasized rapid deployment and flexible response. Other species preferred static defenses and overwhelming force. The combination of technological failures, economic disruption, and security problems was creating a cascade effect throughout galactic civilization. Systems that had worked smoothly for years were breaking down. Trade networks that had been reliable were becoming unstable. Worlds that had been prosperous were facing shortages and economic collapse. And through it all, humanity remained silent. No human ship answered alien distress calls. No human technician offered to help repair failing systems. No human diplomat suggested solutions to the growing crisis. 2 years after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session for the 15th time in 6 months. Speaker Vorthak looked out at the assembled representatives and saw desperation in every face. Half the seats were empty as species after species withdrew from council participation to deal with their own internal crises. Trade Representative Quinn of the Hyperspace Trade Consortium stood to address the assembly, his voice carrying the strain of months of crisis. Management. The economic situation continues to deteriorate. We have lost 67% of our long-range trade capacity. The relay stations continue to fail faster than we can repair them. Without the human-maintained infrastructure, our trade networks are collapsing. The numbers were staggering. The galactic economy had contracted by 40% in just 2 years. Entire sectors that had been prosperous were now facing poverty and shortages. Worlds that had depended on interstellar trade for essential goods were beginning to experience famines and resource crises. Admiral Karen Lewis was overseeing humanity's most ambitious operation yet from her command ship, hidden deep in unexplored space. She had been tasked with completely removing all traces of human influence from the galactic core systems. It was a massive undertaking that required perfect coordination and timing. "All teams report ready," Karen said into her secure communicator. "Begin Operation Lighthouse. All human-built defensive platforms in Council space are to be shut down." Simultaneously, the defensive platforms had been humanity's gift to galactic peace. Massive space stations armed with advanced weapons and shielding technology, they had been placed at strategic points throughout Council space to protect against external threats. For over a decade, they had stood silent watch against invasion from hostile forces outside the galaxy. The platforms had been built with human technology and maintained by human technicians. They were completely automated and required no alien personnel, which had made them perfect for protecting species that preferred not to have foreign military forces in their territory. Now, as Admiral Lewis gave the shutdown command, every platform went dark simultaneously. Across dozens of star systems, the powerful defensive stations that had protected Council worlds for years simply turned off their weapons, shields, and communication systems. The timing could not have been worse for the Council. Intelligence. Reports had been tracking the movement of a major pirate fleet that was preparing to launch raids into the wealthy core systems. The Crimson Tide, a coalition of criminal organizations that had been driven out of Council space years ago, had been rebuilding their strength in the lawless regions beyond the galactic rim. General Mike Thompson monitored the situation from Earth's Strategic Intelligence Center. The data coming in painted a clear picture of the chaos that humanity's final withdrawal was creating. "The Crimson Tide fleet is moving toward the Altair system," Mike reported to President Cross. "Estimated. Strength is over 200 ships. The Council's defensive forces in that sector consist of 40 ships with outdated weapons and no coordination between different species' fleets." The Altair system was one of the richest in Council space, home to the banking centers that financed interstellar trade and the manufacturing facilities that produced high-technology goods for export throughout the galaxy. It was also completely defenseless now that the human-built platforms had gone offline. Council Military Coordinator Thrix was desperately trying to organize a response to the approaching threat. His job had been mostly ceremonial for years, coordinating joint exercises and planning theoretical responses to hypothetical invasions. Now, he was facing a real crisis with forces that had never been designed to work together. "The Vorthani fleet can reach Altair in 6 days," Thrix reported to the emergency Council session. The Meridian ships will take 8 days. The Zephyrian forces are 12 days out. We cannot coordinate a unified defense. The problem was fundamental. Council species had developed their military forces independently, with different technologies, different tactics, and different command structures. During peacetime, this diversity had been seen as a strength. In crisis, it was proving to be a fatal weakness. Humans had served as the unofficial coordinators of galactic defense for years. Their military doctrine emphasized joint operations and unified command structures. Human officers had trained with every council species and understood how to integrate different forces into effective combined operations. Without human coordination, the various council fleets were just independent groups of ships with no way to work together effectively. The Crimson Tide struck Altair 3 days later. The pirate fleet overwhelmed the scattered defensive forces in less than 6 hours. Billions of credits in goods and equipment were stolen or destroyed. Thousands of civilians were killed or captured. The economic heart of the council was left in ruins. The disaster sent shock waves throughout the remaining council territories. If the wealthy core systems weren't safe, nowhere was safe. Panic selling on the commodity markets drove prices to historic lows. Several species announced they were withdrawing from the council entirely to focus on defending their own territories. Dr. Carol White chose that moment to emerge from hiding. She had been humanity's liaison to the Council Science Division for 8 years before the expulsion. She knew more about alien technology and capabilities than any other human alive. Her message was broadcast on every frequency used by Council species, cutting through their communication networks like a knife. Carol appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, her image calm and professional despite the chaos surrounding the broadcast. She wore the blue and silver uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, and behind her was the seal of the human government. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice clear and strong. 2 years ago, your leaders expelled humanity from galactic civilization. They claimed we were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. They imposed containment protocols on our species and divided our achievements among themselves. Carol paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. What your leaders did not tell you was the true extent of humanity's contributions to your civilization. They did not tell you that the engines powering your ships were based on human designs. They did not tell you that the medical treatments saving your lives were developed by human researchers. They did not tell you that the agricultural systems feeding your populations were created by human scientists. She gestured to data displays that appeared beside her image. They did not tell you that the defensive platforms protecting your worlds were built by human engineers. They did not tell you that the communication networks connecting your planets were maintained by human technicians. They did not tell you that the security forces keeping your trade routes safe were coordinated by human military officers. The data was devastating. Scrolling lists showed hundreds of technologies and systems that the Council had been claiming as their own innovations for years. Medical breakthroughs that had been credited to alien researchers were revealed to be human discoveries. Military technologies that had been presented as alien developments were shown to be human inventions. Your leaders stole our achievements and then threw us out when they thought they no longer needed us, Carol continued. They believed they could take what we had built and maintain it without us. They believed they could manage galactic civilization better without human participation. Her expression hardened. The past 2 years have shown the truth. Without human engineers, your technology fails. Without human coordinators, your defenses collapse. Without human innovation, your progress stops. Without human participation, your civilization crumbles. The broadcast was being watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. In government centers, alien leaders watched in growing horror as the true scope of human contributions was revealed. In universities, alien scientists recognized research they had thought was their own. In military bases, alien officers saw tactical innovations they had been taught were developed by their own species. "We offered you partnership," Carol said, her voice growing stronger. "We shared our knowledge freely. We fought and died for your security. We worked to build a galaxy where all species could prosper together. You responded with theft, expulsion, and containment." She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. "Now you can see what your galaxy looks like without us. Your economy is collapsing. Your defenses are failing. Your people are suffering. And through it all, we have remained silent, letting you experience the consequences of your choices." Carol straightened, her expression becoming businesslike. "Humanity withdrew from galactic affairs because you made it clear that you did not value our partnership. We will not return to the system that betrayed us. If you want our help, if you want our cooperation, if you want to rebuild what has been broken, then you will need to offer us something better than what came before." The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. For the first time in 2 years, humanity had spoken to the galaxy. But instead of offering help or forgiveness, they had simply presented the bill for what the Council had thrown away. 3 years after the Great Silence began, Ambassador Chris Wade stood in the observation deck of a space station that didn't appear on any galactic charts. The station hung in the empty space between star systems, far from any government's territory. It had been built in secret over the past year, designed to be a meeting place where no species held advantage over any other. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Chris could see the ships of 5 different alien species arranged in a careful formation around the station. These weren't the proud representatives of the Galactic Council that had expelled humanity 3 years ago. These were desperate survivors of a galactic civilization that was collapsing around them. The Deltari had been the first to reach out. Ambassador Kelvin had spent months trying to establish secret contact with humanity through hidden communication channels. The peaceful Deltari had been humanity's strongest supporters in the old council, and they had paid a heavy price for their loyalty. Their homeworld was facing starvation as their agricultural systems failed without human maintenance. The Zephyrian Republic had followed soon after. Their representative, Minister Zara, had been forced to swallow her pride and admit that her species needed help. The Zephyrians had been among the most vocal critics of human aggression, but now their own people were rioting in the streets as their economy collapsed. 3 smaller species had joined the coalition over the following months. The Altine Union, the Rigel Confederacy, and the Centauri Alliance had all been middle-tier members of the old council. They lacked the pride and arrogance of the major powers, and they were more willing to admit their mistakes. Chris wore the simple gray uniform of the new Terran diplomatic service. The old blue and silver had been retired along with humanity's membership in the Galactic Council. This uniform carried no rank insignia, no medals, no symbols of authority. It was designed to send a message. Humanity was no longer interested in playing the old games of galactic politics. Behind Chris stood Dr. Amy Foster and General Mike Thompson, representing humanity's scientific and military leadership. They had been chosen for this meeting because they had been directly involved in the systems that were now failing throughout the galaxy. If anyone could evaluate whether these alien species were serious about change, it would be them. The meeting began with Ambassador Kelvin of the Deltari, his blue-scaled face showing the strain of 3 years of crisis management. Ambassador Wade, we come to you not as representatives of the old council, but as leaders of species that are dying. Our worlds are failing. Our people are suffering. We need help. Chris nodded, but his expression remained neutral. Ambassador Kelvin, I appreciate your honesty, but we're here because you contacted us, not the other way around. The question is not whether you need help. The question is what you're willing to do to earn it. Minister Zara of the Zephyrian Republic shifted uncomfortably in her environmental suit. What do you want from us? Name your price. We'll pay whatever you ask. That's exactly the wrong attitude, Dr. Foster said sharply. You still think this is about buying our services. You still think you can pay us to fix your problems and then go back to the way things were. General Thompson leaned forward in his chair. Let me be very clear about something. The old Galactic Council is finished. That system was built on inequality and exploitation. The major powers used smaller species as junior partners while taking credit for their achievements. Humans were just the latest group to be used and discarded. The alien representatives exchanged glances. This was not the conversation they had expected. They had come prepared to negotiate terms for humanity's return to galactic affairs. Instead, they were being told that the entire structure of galactic civilization needed to be rebuilt. Chris activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where the old council government had completely collapsed. Yellow zones showed regions where basic services were failing. Only a few green zones remained where any semblance of order still existed. This is what we're dealing with, Chris said. 40% of the galaxy is now ungoverned space. Trade has collapsed to pre-spaceflight levels in most regions. Military conflicts are breaking out as species fight over the remaining resources. The old system is dead. He changed the display to show a different map, one that showed a much smaller but more stable region of space. This is human space as it exists today. Our colonies are prosperous. Our trade routes are secure. Our people are safe. We've proven that we don't need the galaxy. The question is whether the galaxy can admit it needs us. Ambassador Kelvin's voice was quiet when he spoke. What would you have us do? First, Chris said, you need to formally dissolve the Galactic Council and renounce all claims to authority over other species. The old system was based on the idea that some species were more qualified to lead than others. We reject that premise entirely. Minister Zara's environmental suit hissed as she shifted position. And replace it with what? Dr. Foster activated another display that showed the proposed structure of a new federation. Equal representation for every member species regardless of size or technological level. Decisions made by consensus, not by majority vote or council decree. Shared resources and knowledge, with no species claiming ownership over innovations developed through cooperation. General Thompson added, most importantly, no species gets to dictate terms to any other. The old council system was built on the idea that advanced species had the right to control less advanced ones. The new federation would be built on the principle that every species has the right to govern itself. The alien representatives sat in silence for several minutes, processing what they were being told. They had come expecting to negotiate humanity's return to the old system. Instead, they were being offered the chance to build something completely new. Representative Jorek of the Altine Union was the first to speak. And if we agree to this, humanity will help us rebuild. Not just humanity, Chris said. This has to be a joint effort. Every species contributes what they can. Humans have certain technological and organizational advantages, but other species have their own strengths. The Deltari are natural diplomats. The Zephyrians are excellent traders. The smaller species often have innovations that the larger powers overlooked. He paused, looking around the table at each representative. But understand this. We're not offering to fix your problems for you. We're offering to work with you to fix our shared problems. There's a difference. Ambassador Kelvin nodded slowly. We would need to convince our governments, and they would need to convince their people. Many of our citizens still blame humanity for the current crisis. Then they need to learn the truth, Dr. Foster said firmly. The crisis was caused by the Council's decision to steal human innovations and then expel us when they thought they no longer needed our help. Your people suffered because your leaders made a catastrophic mistake. General Thompson activated a final display that showed the timeline of the past 3 years. We've been monitoring the situation throughout the galaxy. We know which governments have been trying to contact us secretly. We know which species have been working to reverse the Council's expulsion order. We also know which ones are still claiming that humanity was the problem. The display highlighted several species in red, including the Vorthani Empire and the core Council worlds. These species are not invited to join the new Federation. They've made it clear that they believe in the old system of dominance and exploitation. They can continue to follow that path without our participation. Minister Zara looked at the display with obvious concern. What about trade with those regions? Some of our most important partners are highlighted in red. That's their choice, Chris said. If they want to continue following the old system, they're free to do so. But they'll do it without access to human technology, human markets, or human protection. The species that join the new Federation will have access to all of those things. The negotiations continued for 2 more days. The alien representatives needed to contact their governments and discuss the proposals with their leadership. The requirements for joining the new Federation were clear: formal dissolution of the old Council system, equal representation for all member species, shared decision-making authority, and a commitment to mutual cooperation rather than hierarchical control. When the final agreements were signed, representatives from 17 species had committed to the new Federation. It was less than half the size of the old Council, but it included species that were genuinely committed to change, rather than simply desperate for help. President Helen Cross addressed the galaxy for the first time in 3 years from the bridge of the newly commissioned Federation station. The massive space station had been built jointly by human and alien crews using technologies developed through genuine cooperation rather than theft or coercion. 3 years ago, Helen said, her image being broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy, humanity was expelled from the Galactic Council because we were deemed too aggressive and unpredictable for civilized galactic society. The Council decided they could manage the galaxy better without us.